Hi everyone. Welcome to our Global Studies Undergraduate webinar. It's great to see so many people joining the call. We'll just give it another minute before we get started with the session. Um, we do have a chat box. So if you do have any questions throughout for any of our panelists, please just put your questions into the chat box and we'll get back to you. So without further ado, I think we'll make a start. My name's Sian. I'm the marketing manager for the international team here at Sussex, and I'm really delighted that you're joining us for our Development Week series. So today we're going to be talking about our undergraduate development courses that we offer here at Sussex. And we've got Suda Perera, who is an assistant professor in international development, and who's going to give you a bit of an overview of the courses that we offer. Also delighted to welcome, we've got Somerset, who is one of our alumni from our undergraduate programs. She's going to tell you a little bit more about her experience and career since graduating towards the end of the webinar. And we've also got Kana, who will be joining the call to discuss her current student experience because she's currently on one of our undergraduate programs. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Suda.
Great, thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen and also put my slideshow on. I hope everyone can see that. Sian, would you mind just letting me know that people can see the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Great, fantastic. Thank you. Sorry, I can't see the panelists or the chat when my slideshow starts, so I might ask for a little bit of audio confirmation of things. So, hi everyone, my name's Dr. Suda Perera. I am a lecturer in international development here at the School of Global Studies. I am also the undergraduate admissions tutor. So, if you have any questions after this session, if you want to email me and ask any questions about things like entry requirements or course structures, I would be the person to get in touch with. I'm also, of course, happy to take questions at the end. I will say if there's anything that you need clarifying as we go along, please also pop that in the chat and I'll ask Sian if you wouldn't mind just letting me know. I'm happy to be interrupted as I'm talking. So yes, today I'm going to talk through the undergraduate development courses that we offer here at Sussex. That includes our flagship BA in International Development, the single honours. We also have a brand new and the UK's first and only climate justice degree in climate justice, sustainability and development. And a wide range of joint or minor international development degrees where you can combine international development with another subject. So I'll talk through all those options as we progress. But what I thought I'd do first, just to kind of get to know each other a little bit better, is think about introducing ourselves and what international development is. So I'll do that first, talk about who we are and maybe think about what brought us here. I'll then move on to talk about what development is, and in particular, understanding this idea that we have here about international development as an interdisciplinary subject. That's a big word, and thinking about what that really means in practice. And then I will talk a little bit about the course outlines and the structure with a little bit of help from Kana, who's going to talk about her experience and some of the modules she's picked. And then finally, we'll talk about the kind of skills and perspectives you gain from studying development at Sussex with help from Somerset, who's actually going to talk about her journey and her career after graduating from Sussex. Okay, so in terms of introductions, I just wanted to talk a little bit about myself. So as I said, my name is Suda. I have not always been an international development lecturer. In fact, I had a career before becoming a lecturer, working as a former aid worker and also a peace builder. I have worked for UNICEF in the London office. I worked for the government of Rwanda, demobilizing former child soldiers. That picture of me carrying those water cans in is when I lived and worked in Rwanda. I then became a track two conflict analyst, which is a form of kind of research and diplomacy. I lived in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and I worked alongside the UN peacekeeping mission in Congo, researching into armed groups and speaking to members of armed groups in terms of why they fight, thinking about the different ways we can encourage them to leave those militarized structures. And I have advised the UK government, the UN, and the World Bank on its programming and policy on conflict and security in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. So when I had children, I realized that as much as I love this work, living and working in war zones wasn't that compatible with family life. And I decided that I wanted to think about training peace builders of the future. And so I made the transition into teaching international development. I still carry out research in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. I spend summers doing research and fieldwork into conflict, peace, and intervention. And I also translate that into my teaching. So I teach a range of courses that look at this idea of peace and justice from what we call a decolonial perspective, looking in particular from the perspective of those most affected by conflict and living under conflict. And the reason I've spent a bit of time sort of talking about me and what I do is to kind of give you a flavour of what it might be like to learn here at Sussex and who you will be learning from. And I think what makes international development particularly stand out is you will be learning from practitioners and people who have worked in the field, have experience from the field. I have colleagues who have worked previously as, for example, labour organisers, climate activists, people who have worked in government, people who have worked in civil service, etc. And they teach you from that practice-based background of how we can kind of deal with these issues. And we put the kind of employability, careers, and practice at the heart of everything we teach. So that's a little bit of a background to me. I thought it'd be nice to get to know you a little bit better. It's always hard in a kind of webinar situation where I can't see you face to face, but maybe if in the chat you could maybe write a little bit about your name, where you're from, which of the courses you might be interested in. If you know at this stage, don't worry if you don't know, I will talk through the different options. And maybe if you've been to Sussex before, or if you haven't, then maybe I can talk a little bit about the beautiful campus we have here as well. So, Sian, I'm going to exit out of my full screen for a minute so I can see the chat as well. Don't know. Fantastic. So I think say hi, Ellie. Welcome from the UK. And Danjuma from Nigeria. I'm not sure if I'm seeing any other messages. Sian, can you see any?
I think that's the only ones I can see for
Okay,
now. Um, but yeah, great. Welcome to the webinar. Thanks for putting your details in the chat. But yes, if you do have any questions throughout, just write them in there and then we'll get back to them.
fantastic. Great. So I'll just put my screen back up to discuss this question of what is development. And I thought I'd start here because some people, they kind of come to a session like this with maybe a vague idea of what development is, or they really have no idea and they've come because they want to find out more. And so I thought it's definitely worth talking a little bit about what development is and how it has been understood, and particularly how we understand it here at Sussex. So I think the easiest way to describe what development is, and I say, if I had to describe this to my 8-year-old, how would I say what it is I do? And I would say that broadly speaking, development is really about making the world a better place. Okay, so it sort of refers to any kind of activities, programs, and policies that are aimed at making things fairer in terms of kind of redressing inequalities, more peaceful in preventing conflicts, and more sustainable in thinking about how we can coexist with nature and the environment and continue to live on this planet. Okay, so that's the very broad sort of overview of what development is. But within that, we have a kind of history that it's worth thinking about. So there is a kind of traditional view of development, and this emerged after the end of World War II, and as we see this process of the breakup of the various European empires as well, which sort of emerged from this division in the world between what we saw as the global north and the global south, which was often used to refer to richer countries in the global north and poorer countries in the global south. And also, broadly speaking, those richer countries in the global north tended to be those countries that had had a history of being kind of the colonizers, and the poorer countries being their former colonies. And we could see that during this period, development was very much framed as this idea of modernizing, that those poorer countries in the global south had these issues of poverty that were driven from this idea that they didn't have the modern societies that the global north societies had or Western societies had. And development was seen as a way of kind of bringing these countries up to a kind of modern, and I'm using that in inverted commas if you can see what I'm saying, sort of standard, right? And we see that this is kind of carried through into the 1990s with the kind of ascendancy of the US, the end of the Cold War, and the kind of moment in which the US establishes itself as the kind of world superpower, that much of what development was about promoting economic growth in poorer countries and alleviating poverty through these kinds of adjustments to promote these kind of capitalist liberal democracies that had elections and sort of free market economics. Now, I should say that that's the sort of traditional mainstream view of development, but pretty much from the beginning, there had been people who had critiqued that idea of development, and who said, well, you know, this isn't necessarily the way to make the world a better place, because what you're kind of ignoring in that story is that a lot of that north-south, rich-poor divide is as a result of colonialism, is as a result of the fact that those wealthier countries extracted labor resources from the global south, that they exploited those countries, and that there continues to be power imbalances in the way the world is organized, that there are unfair and unequal trade rules, unfair and unequal systems of power and governance in organizations like the United Nations, etc., which mean that there are divides in the world between rich and poor and global north and global south. And actually, the point of development is not to modernize those global south countries, because firstly, that's difficult to do in an unequal system, and also to realize that even in those global north countries, there are issues of inequality, underdevelopment, poverty, and all these developmental issues as well. Development there should be about redressing injustice, about structural changes that change that balance. So things like cancelling third world debt, for example, might be an early example of thinking of development as redressing injustice rather than maybe moving towards measuring GDP and growth. So at Sussex, we kind of take this second approach quite seriously and think about the global connections that present us with developmental issues and global challenges that I'll come to talk about in a second. But we also think about what is the outcome of development. And here again, we draw from voices from around the world. So just to give an example, in the 1990s, when this idea of modernizing to a Western ideal was being exported as quite a mainstream way of doing development. There was a commission of different actors from the Global South called the South Commission, who tried to reframe what development was, and they understood that development was a process which gives all humans dignity, fulfillment, and freedom from fear and want. And that's something that we at Sussex also take very seriously, that we're not just looking at ideas like economic growth or alleviating poverty, but also thinking about ideas around dignity, who gets to live full lives with equalities of opportunity and have freedom of expression and also have freedom from fear. That's freedom from the threat of war and the consequences of violence, and also freedom from want, that their basic needs are met. So that's how we think of development here at Sussex. In terms then of thinking about how we study that, we take a interdisciplinary approach. And so what we think about are a range of different global challenges. So those challenges could be, the climate crisis, it could be migration crises like refugee crises, it could be rising inequality, crises in infrastructure, all kinds of different, pandemics, for example, and health crises, all kinds of different issues, as well as, global conflicts. And we try and think about how we can address them by asking a series of questions that draw on a range of different disciplines. So if we are, for example, to look at an issue like how we deal with climate change, we might ask historical questions of that, of how does the past shape our present problems and solutions? And we can think in a kind of climate justice framework of asking, who has been responsible for some of the problems that we have, who is being asked to adapt to that, and who is vulnerable as a result of the consequences of that. And we can see that there are kind of colonial roots to the answers to some of those questions. We can ask within that, though, other questions, like some of the more geographical questions around how can we ensure that we protect our environment. We can also ask about systems of power, so things that might be seen as more kind of political. How do they affect the challenges we face? How can we kind of think about how those systems of power might say that only certain solutions are available to us? And then coming back to this question of dignity, we might ask some of these more sociological or anthropological questions around how societies are organized to allow us to live with dignity. We might ask these kind of economic questions around resources. How can they be distributed more equitably? And we can also ask some more personal questions. How do we understand our identities and place in the world in terms of how we might think about being agents of change for this? These could be more kind of social psychology questions as well. And then finally, and I think this is quite a important one, we also take a kind of media literacy, critical media studies approach to thinking about how we can describe the world and talk about all these different issues. We see what we learn as not just conversations that happen in the classroom, but also conversations that you might be having at higher levels and thinking about how you might be talking to other policymakers, talking in the media, but also talking to family and friends and thinking about developing a vocabulary for change as well. So in terms of the development courses then, those sort of map on a little bit to the range of questions that we might ask. All those different approaches are taken in our flagship single honours international development BA. But we also see that we take a very similar approach in our brand new climate justice, sustainability and development BA, which takes that kind of climate justice framework that I discussed in terms of kind of responsibility, vulnerability, and adaptability. We also offer a range of joint honours, And those joint honours allow you to maybe specialise in particular types of questions. So if you're interested in global politics and questions of power, you might be interested in doing a joint honours in international relations and development. If you are interested in questions more to do with kind of environment and space, you might be interested in doing a joint honours in geography and international development. We also have a degree in economics and sustainable development that looks at some of those resource questions. And if you're more interested in some of the kind of societal aspects of, who benefits and who loses out in various developmental interventions, but also who is affected by different global challenges, then you might be interested, depending on whether you're interested in the kind of cultural organization of that, in the anthropology and international development joint honours, or the sociology and international development joint honours, which looks more around those ideas of like sociological change. So those are some of the options that are available. Is Canna available right now, Sean? Can you?
Yes, I can see Canna on the call.
If I take a small break to allow her to talk about her experience, and then I can talk through the structures of the courses.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And can you see my screen right now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you
Thanks.
very much. So, hi everyone. My name is Kana and I'm from Japan. I'm a second year student studying international relations and development at Sussex. So my degree is like joint degree. And I chose Sussex mainly because of a module I really wanted to take in my third year called Development, Business and Corporate Social Responsibility. Before coming here, I studied international relations in Japan and I was really interested in inequality and how businesses can contribute to reducing it. I believed cooperation could play a major role in addressing inequality. Although studying here for 2 years has completely changed my perspective on businesses, the discussion, the readings, and the why professor challenges have made me rethink my perspectives. And Sussex also offers a wide range of optional modules compared to other universities based on my research. So I felt this would allow me to broaden my perspective beyond my specific interest. And personally, I believe Sussex is ranked #1 in the world for development studies because the teaching pushes us to question not only what we think, but why it matters and how it shaped the world. Those are critical questions. Same as international relations, critical thinking is central to how we analyze the world and global politics. Although my professors in our NID have been incredibly supportive and passionate about their research, and learning from them has really broadened my perspectives. Studying both subjects have helped me build knowledge both theoretically and practically, and I truly enjoy this joint degree. And as an international student, I know how expensive it is to study here, but I truly feel that my time here has been worth the investment. There are many opportunities on campus. In my academic life, I joined International Relations Society in my first year, and as a committee member, I visited embassies of Belgium and Japan to discuss foreign policies. And my favorite module so far include critical approach to development economics, which strengthened my critical thinking and gave me a solid foundation. I also really enjoyed Introduction to International Political Economy, which inspired me to consider pursuing my PhD in the future. Currently, my favorite module is Gender, Race and Sexuality, which Suda is my current professor, which has given me completely new perspectives. It helps me understand the gender issues are deeply interconnected with other structural issues. I also enjoy the modules called Development in the States and The Rise and Fall of Neoliberalism, which further developed my understanding of global inequality between global North and South and how the development of state matters. And outside of my study, I worked as a student ambassador and international student ambassador and a residential life connector on campus. International student can work up to 20 hours. So there are many opportunities if you're willing to take them and, of course, taking actions. And I should also mention the support system. There is academic advising, 24/7 study spaces, counseling, visa support, housing support, and strong well-being services, and many supports available. Personally, I find it challenging to live entirely in a second language, as this is my first time outside of my country in my life. So my English was not very strong at first, and I sometimes felt lonely as well. But counseling and emotional support help both my mental health and my confidence. Working on campus also helped me build a strong sense of community, and Sussex really emphasized the inclusivity and community, sense of belonging of community. So through jobs or academics and all aspects of university life, we can feel that sense of community and inclusivity. And in terms of my future career path, when I first arrived, I imagined working in international development, so NGOs and the government, or as a consultant in a corporation. But through my studies for 2 years, especially learning about structural inequalities, I realized that I want to continue asking critical questions and contribute through in academia. So now I plan to pursue my master's degree and eventually a PhD in international political economy, which is kind of in between IR and IG, but lean towards IR at Sussex. And the last thing, my kind of advice to prospective students is, even if you don't know exactly what you want to do yet, that's completely fine, I think. If you're passionate about specific theme or subject or just curiosity, just taking the first step and choose best university for you, and how you spend time here or university matters the most. So try new things, talk to people, and explore opportunities. You will gradually discover your path. And thank you. And I hope to see some of you at Sussex. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kana. That's really helpful. Thank you. So I will just reshare my screen then and moved to talk a little bit about the structure of the course, and I'll also refer back to some of the stuff that Kana referred to in terms of the modules that she picked and the ones that she might have enjoyed as well. So I'll focus mainly on your first year, but I will briefly talk about second and third year as well. And it really depends which of our degree options that you pick. And we have a slightly different structure for the international development, single honours BA, the joint honours degree, and also the climate justice, sustainability and development degree. We also have a slightly different structure again for the economics and sustainable development degree, which is a joint honours with economics, but also with a minor in geography and a minor in international development. So I'll talk through, but if you're thinking of economics and sustainable development, the modules with the stars by them, so I can hover under climate justice and sustainable development, these two modules with the stars are the core modules you would do in that degree. So if I talk through the international development single honours, and then I will talk through the others. What we try and do in your first year, and particularly in your first term of your first year, is to give you a very broad overview of what international development is and how it has come to be understood that way. And so one of your core modules, Colonialism and its Afterlives, which is taught by my colleague, Professor Alan Lester, who is probably one of the leading voices in the UK looking at the effects of colonialism on the developmental challenges we face today. teaches this module that really looks at the kind of global inequalities that we have inherited as a result of colonialism, and the way that some of those spectres of the colonial past still continue today in terms of power inequalities, in terms of what we think is possible and what we imagine development to be. And this is a really fascinating module that will give you a real overview to understand how we've reached the point in the world that we have reached right now, tracing that history. At the same time, you will learn about what all those different global challenges are that we have to overcome. So, like I said, that involves understanding the climate crisis, understanding rising inequality, migration and refugee crises, thinking about health and global pandemics, thinking about kind of how we understand infrastructure, corporate social responsibility, economic shocks and crises, energy shocks, global supply chains. All of these kinds of issues are covered in your module Global Challenges and Innovations. And it's called Global Challenges and Innovations because as much as you will learn about all these challenges we have to overcome, you will also learn about how different people have been acting to address those issues and to fight for justice. If you are doing the single honours degree, you will also have a third core option, or core module, sorry, which is called Engaging with Development at Sussex. And this traces our long history at Sussex here of being a world-leading centre for development learning. And you will be taught by a number of different experts, a different expert either each week or every other week, who will show you the kind of cutting-edge research that they do. And the purpose of this module is to really give you an overview of what it means to work in and study development, and how that research translates into, real life action. If you are doing the joint honours, you won't do Engaging with Development at Sussex, but you will do Colonialism and its Afterlives and Global Challenges and Innovations. And then your other two modules in that first term will be the core modules from the other half of the degree that you do. If you're doing single honours, you can pick an elective from a range of Progressive Futures electives, but you can also choose to do a language as well, and we offer a range of languages that I'll talk about later. If you're doing the Climate Justice and Sustainability and Development degree, you will also do Colonialism and its Afterlives and Global Challenges and Innovations, but you will additionally have another core module, which is an Introduction to Climate Change. That gives you that kind of broad grounding in order to work for climate justice. In terms of your core modules, if you are doing the single honours international development in term 2, we then try and give you both a theoretical and political overview. So Key Thinkers and Doers in Development covers some of the main thinkers that have shaped development discourses, but also looks at how those ideas are translated into practice and how people are using those ideas. And we also look at the kind of policies and politics of development, why we might pursue certain developmental initiatives and certain ways of dealing with global challenges and not pursue other ways that might seem like sensible ways as well, because of the way that global politics is arranged. And that's something that kind of Kanna was talking about before. And you will also have a core module on the kind of institutions of aid and development. This is particularly important right now because there have, of course, as you may well know, have been quite a lot of cuts to things like the US aid and government-backed aid, but we'll be looking at other sources of aid, such as philanthropic aid, which has been on the rise, but also things like crowd-funded support and different types of approaches to trying to fund innovations to tackle global challenges. Again, if you're doing a joint degree, you will just do the first two modules, and then the other two will be from your joint subject. in the climate justice degree, you will do development policies and politics the same as the single honours, but you will have two other core modules. One being the introduction to climate justice, which moves from the idea of climate change to a climate justice framework. But you'll also learn about environmental management and sustainable development. Okay, so the idea overall is that whichever of these degrees you do, by the end of your first year, you will have a really broad overview of what it means to work in development, what the various developmental challenges are, the various theories that kind of ground our thinking, and the way that politics and policies work to shape certain types of action. And the reason we give you this very broad overview is that we find that some students come in and they know exactly what area they want to work in. And some students think they know what area they want to work in because it's what they've heard about before, but they didn't know that other areas were possible. From my own personal experience, I find not many students come in necessarily wanting to work as peace builders or work in peace and conflict because they didn't know a lot about it. And then they learn about peace building, and that might be something they want to specialize in. You'll be amazed how much people find that they are actually fascinated by infrastructure once they have some lectures on it, but it doesn't sound that interesting just from the outside. So these are the kinds of things we try and do. We try and make sure you have a little bit of exposure to all the different elements, and then you can work out what you're interested in. So in your second year, the first term of your second year is what I like to describe as the time when you develop your technical skills. Okay, so in the first term of your second year, if you're a single honours student, you will take 3 core modules. The first is social justice and development, which really teaches you how social change happens. So you look at different social movements and understand how they have fought for justice, how they've understood justice, how they've worked with different aspects of power to bring that change about. And this is really important if you want to go and work in development, for you to really understand how change happens and how you can work to be part of change. The second core module, which Kana mentioned, was critical approaches to economic development. We know that students have different levels of interest in economics. Some are very interested in that, some not particularly. But we understand that, you know, many of the ways that development programs have operated have been reliant on certain economic models. Now, we may or may not agree with those economic models. And we don't make you do economics, but we give you a kind of economic literacy so that if you do disagree with those models, if you do think things need to be done a different way, you need to understand how to kind of critique those models in economic terms. So we show you how to analyze economic data, how to challenge some of the assumptions of that economic data and the kind of programs and policies that come out as a result. And that's why we call it critical approaches to economic development. It is economics, but we aren't making you become economists. We're showing you how to critique and think about some of those models. And then the third core module that you have to do is called Research Skills for Development. And this is how we teach you how to interview people, how to conduct primary data, how to go on field work, how to think about your dissertations and what makes a good project, and come up with different ways of putting forward a good project. This is particularly useful if you want to go and work in the development industry to learn how you can sell an idea and show research is rigorous, but also is really useful if in your third year you decide you want to do your own project, such as an ID thesis, and I'll talk about that in a moment. If you do the joint honours degree, you don't do research skills for development, but you do the other 2 core modules, and then your other modules will be the core modules from your joint subject. And then if you do the climate justice degree, then you will do social justice and development and critical approaches to economic development, the same as single honours and joint honours, but you will additionally have a core module on global climate change. In your second term, unlike the other two courses where you have options, it's all picking options, you do also have two more core modules on climate justice policy and activism and environmental perspectives on development. I should say that both those core modules are also available as options to anyone who wants to do the international development single honours and joint honours degrees. So as you can see from this diagram, in the second term of your second degree, you mainly pick options. And this is because once you've got halfway through your degree, we feel you have enough general overview, understanding, and you have got your general skills training. And now it's really time for you to specialise. Okay. So in term 2 of your second year, you have a range of options. I have tried to kind of group these primarily because we find that students tend to be broadly interested in 4 main areas. They tend to be interested in kind of global politics, thinking about those kind of global structures and things like conflict. This often appeals to people also doing joint honours, such as Kanna, who studying international relations and international development. But we see that, as Kanna pointed out, she doesn't just do global politics modules. She also does some that might fall under this broader category of economic and social justice, issues around health, poverty and inequality, or gender, race and sexuality, which is the module that I teach. Of course, we have students who are interested in climate sustainability. The modules available to them are also the core modules, as I mentioned before, for climate justice. And environmental perspectives on development is also one of the core modules for the economics and sustainable development degree as well. And then we have students who at this point are still not necessarily focused on a particular topic, but are really keen to work in the development industry and want to have more of those practice-based skills. So we have modules, practitioner and activist skills, for example, where you are taught how to design a campaign, and that is part of your assessment as well, to kind of think about how you hone and develop those skills. It is also possible that instead of doing any of these modules, that you choose the second term of your second year to spend a semester abroad. So of course you can mix these with your joint options, but some students decide that they want to spend that specific term abroad. You can do that as part of a 3-year degree, or you can, and this is a slightly separate thing that I'll talk about in a minute, take an entire extra year and spend a whole year abroad and make that a 4-year degree. So in your third year then, everything is options. There's a whole range of different modules available. I'm just kind of going to show you these. I won't talk through every single one, but I will talk through a couple of things. So the first is that there is an ID thesis. I talked about this a little bit when I talked about the research skills for development. This is an opportunity for you to write a longer project on something that you are very specifically interested in. So just to give a couple of examples, I have a student this year that I am supervising who is looking at whether there can be business opportunities presented to returning Islamic State soldiers in Iraq. He had previously worked in Iraq with a Japanese company that was setting up business opportunities for former soldiers. It's a really interesting thesis that he's working on. He has been interviewing people who are currently in Iraq, setting up various business opportunities. Prior to that, I had a student who wanted to look at, for example, the Women's World Cup and how the extra attention on women's football as a result of the Women's World Cup, whether that had translated into more funding for grassroots sports for girls, particularly school-age girls, across the world. And she interviewed girls who play football and professional footballers and football organisations in Kenya, South Africa, and the UK, and did a kind of comparative project. So these are just two examples of the range of different things you can do. They're two very different projects. They both had a chance to collect primary data from people, which is something I would really recommend. But these were things that they were particularly passionate about and interested in that may have cut through some of the different modules available to them, but weren't necessarily covered specifically in a module. So the ID thesis allows you to kind of look at that and pursue a particular passion or interest of yours. The other module I wanted to point out was this global work experience module. This is one where we help you find a work placement or internship, recognizing that not everyone has the networks to organize those themselves. And also realizing that sometimes people don't have the time or the money necessarily to do internships outside of their studying. We integrate this into the course, and we found it's quite popular with people trying to get a little bit of experience. We help you find that. You do the placement as part of your course, and your assignment gets you to reflect on that experience and do a kind of organizational analysis of that organisation. And we found that students on that course have really enjoyed it, found it really valuable, and some have gone on to then work at the organisations that they did their placement with. So again, a very popular one aimed at kind of those practitioner skills. So just again, you can combine this with a range of joint options. As you can see, if you do climate justice, there are some core modules you have to do. And again, another range of options in the second term of your third year. So that's what your whole degree sort of would look like. What we hope everyone gets, and this is something that I think is quite important, is towards the end of their degree, everyone's done something a bit different, but they come out with these very similar skills. So a kind of critical understanding of the world, an opportunity to see like the bigger picture, an ability to collect evidence, this awareness and ability to think strategically, some really great political communication skills. We get you to talk and communicate in lots of different ways, and an ability to work with others. We're always getting you to support each other. I'm really aware we're sort of out of time, so if you want to know more about, what goes on in the department, please give us a follow on Instagram. That's what it's like on a sort of daily basis. We also have a podcast where you can listen to what your faculty might be talking about. And you can customize your course in a range of ways. I want to give Somerset a chance to talk, so maybe we can talk about that at the end in the questions, if that's all right, Sian.
Yes, I was just gonna say we're a bit tight for time. We've got
Yeah,
about 5 minutes left. So if we let Somerset talk, and then if
absolutely.
you've got any questions, pop them in the
Yeah,
chat and we'll always follow up with them.
yeah,
So over to you,
great.
Somerset.
Thank you.
Sorry, let me stop my share.
Thanks. Let me just get my slide up. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. So yeah, my name is Somerset. So I studied economics and international development at Sussex, and I graduated in 2020. So sort of following Sussex, I joined the Department of Health and Social Care, which is a governmental department, where I worked as an assistant economist, and I worked in that department for 5 years, and sort of worked on a variety of different roles, kind of policy making roles, but in a more analytical role, and also thinking about kind of government evidence and evaluation. So did some work on theories of change, which I covered quite a lot in my development modules. And yeah, also looking at international research and data. So the picture at the bottom, I'm the one in the bright orange t-shirt. So that is part of the European Observatory, which DHSC is a member of. So that was really a cool opportunity to sort of meet other international governments working in health research and sort of prioritizing UK interests. So sort of like a good kind of global international role. And then I've also done some more specific like economic roles, so estimating costs and benefits of different health policies. And then I recently just completed my master's apprenticeship in economics that I was able to sort of do whilst working, which was really great. And in that, I also sort of focused on, I chose modules, in development and the environment, which I'm quite interested in. And yeah, this month I joined DEFRA, which is the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, where I'm going to be working on producing sort of like data dashboards for the Secretary of State and their priorities. So yeah, a bit of a varied kind of career so far in the civil service. I can say a little bit about kind of like why I chose Sussex and what I thought were like my main highlights from studying there. So I really wanted to do a course that was sort of split between economics and development, because I did economics and geography in sixth form, and I was quite interested in both, and I didn't know which one I wanted to do, so I went for the joint honours. I don't know if that course is offered anymore, but I think economics and sustainable development is sort of similar and actually sounds more what I would have been interested in. So I'm quite jealous if you guys get to do that. And yeah, also, yeah, Sussex being ranked kind of first in the world for development studies. It just sort of felt like if you want to do development, I feel like Sussex really is the place to do it. And it's just, yeah, really amazing course. And yeah, one of my highlights, so the picture on the left is of me and my friend Sarah. In our final year, we sort of campaigned to get Sussex to join Electronics Watch, which was making sure that sort of where the university sourced their electronics from was sort of coming from sustainable places with sort of like good workers' rights. So that was quite a good highlight. And then sort of linking sort of my time at Sussex and then my career now, I feel like Sussex gave me a very like broad knowledge where I was able to kind of cater it to my specific interests. So for me, that was sort of sustainability, the environment, but also economic growth and also kind of econometrics and statistics. So I feel like I like a bit of a mix, and I liked the way that you could sort of do both and how they interact. And some of the modules that I took, I think only one of them is still on there, but it was development tools and skills, which if you have any interest in kind of working in government policy, I would say is like the most practical module that I took in Sussex. It was amazing, really looking at like stakeholder analysis and theories of change. So that's what I have on the slide as well. It's sort of like resources and inputs that go into your policies and then the sort of impacts and outcomes that they have on your population groups. So yeah, very practical module. I think we did cost benefit analysis as well, which is one of the main things that I've done. So really recommend that one. And then I also did horizontal development, which yeah, was sort of questioning where aid comes from and that sort of like traditional relationship of North and South and more South-South cooperation, which when I became sort of like applied for the assistant economist role, I sort of did, you have to present on a specialist economic topic, and I did trade and aid. So yeah, that was just sort of really interesting to me. And then just very quickly, sort of some things I would recommend if you're thinking about studying development at Sussex. I think it's quite important to just sort of like choose what interests you. Maybe you don't know at the moment. I didn't really know when I was applying. All I knew was that I wanted to do economics and I was interested in development, and I was quite interested in the environment and sort of social justice. So I just sort of picked modules that I thought sort of aligned to that. And yeah, for me, the best fit was Sussex, and I really enjoyed my time. So yeah, happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Somerset. That's really insightful. And really lovely to hear about your career since graduating as well. We've got a couple of minutes left, so yeah, if you do have any questions, put them in the chat. If not, I'll be sending this webinar recording around. So if you do have any questions afterwards, you've got our contact details. There's one from Eloise for Suda. Is it possible to switch to a single honours degree if you've been accepted on a joint honours?
Absolutely, yeah. We find a lot of students switch both ways. So we have people who come in on single honours who want to go to joint, and people who have joint honours who want to come to single. It happens really quickly, really easily, and you can switch you can switch almost straight away. You can switch after Christmas, or you can switch in your second year before you go into second year. So you have a lot of time to think about that as well.
Brilliant. So I don't know if there's no more questions in the chat. So I think all that's left to say is thanks so much for joining us today. We really are grateful that you're here to celebrate Development Studies Week with us. And big thank you to Somerset and Canna who shared their Sussex experience, and to Suda for the excellent presentation about all of our development courses. There's so many to choose from. I didn't quite realise the whole breadth. So yeah, if you do have any questions, please do get in touch with us. And thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Can I just say, if you have specific course questions, please do email me. I just couldn't go through the whole breadth of it in the time we had, but happy to answer specific questions as well. So yeah.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.